Hello, this is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen.
I've been out. It's the Black Country Blokes chewing the fat, here with me, Kev Dillon, Lee Cadman, and our guest today is Mike Wood, who's our local MP. So Mike, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much, Kev. It's been great to finally be able to get here and see some of the fantastic work you do in the community.
Well, as we all know, we're here, men's mental health, but mental health doesn't really have a gender. And I don't know if you've seen recently, we've been doing the videos, mental health doesn't care if, and it doesn't care if you're black, white, brown, woman, gay, it affects us all. It's like a cancer that can affect us. It's like a cancer, I'm a triathlete, I've never smoked, never drank, and then cancer gets you. And unfortunately, that is mental health. And I'm so happy and privileged, aren't we, to have Mike here today.
Definitely. I think you're right there, Kev. You know, it doesn't matter which side of the group you're on with mental health, whether you're Conservative, Labour, anyone can suffer it. So it's very important that we get people of all backgrounds to come in and talk about it and their experience.
And so often it can be people looking from the outside, from a distance, will imagine they've got everything going for them. Other times there will be people who look as though they're struggling, but in both cases, you don't know what's going on inside people's head until you have those conversations, do you?
Well, whether you're living in a 20-bedroom mansion or whether you're in a cardboard box, problems are problems. And that's, because I'm a mental health first aider and we've been doing this for 2 years and we started this before the pandemic. And as we're aware, and we were saying off camera, mental health often isn't having the same shout as physical health. And I think it's not perfect in this country how we're treating it. And I'm going to try and say some stuff and we're not here to say it's the Tories, the Labour, whoever, but we've got to work together as volunteers to MPs what we can do to make it better. And I think we had Glenn on the other week, who's a nurse at Russell's Hall, and he was saying there isn't enough mental health first aiders in the NHS. And I honestly believe in the next how many years, this year, 5 years, 10 years, we're going to have a massive insurgency of PTSD within the NHS. And we need more first aiders to look after our heroes. What do you think we can do? Do we think, with the police, never mind the Joey on the street, in the professions, what can we do you think, to make it better?
Well, I think it has to be about early identification, diagnosis, and intervention, doesn't it? In that, I think for a lot of people, when they think about mental health, they think very much, as we were saying, about the acute end of mental health. They may think about
in the movies,
secure intervention. They may, you're right. It might be One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It might be, bushy fields. Whereas no one only thinks about physical health in terms of accidents and emergency. Most people understand that there is so much before that. And we need to really focus on mental wellness rather than just thinking about when people are clearly already very, very unwell and trying to tackle it at that point. If we can help people to stay well mentally as well as physically, then it's got so many different benefits, not only on health level, on social level, on economic, on crime, on all of the different issues, obviously in terms of family, in terms of keeping families together. All of these issues they feed into poor mental health. And then, of course, when people's mental health is suffering, it also affects all these other parts of their lives as well.
Because I've seen it with people within the bushy fields of the world. And it's horrifying when you've been there myself with friends. And it's very, let's drug them, let's pretend the problem isn't there. And I won't mention the young man's name, but he's 17, and because he's in that gap of being a child and a man, so he went to Bushy Field and he was kept basically in solitary confinement. And when you've got problems in your head, an overworking head, and then you're left in a room to be with those in your head, It was torture. That's the worst thing we can do in prison. And it's like if I rip my bicep now, and everyone could understand the rip bicep, and then someone said, well, lift heavy weights, curling it. It's absurd. So we need to find a better way of treating these people, more talking therapies, instead of just drugging and locking them away.
Yeah, I mean, I think talking therapies and that kind of non-pharmaceutical intervention is absolutely where we need to be moving more of the NHS's resources into how we help people to stay well. That you can't just do it with, as you say, whether it's uppers, downers, and whatever. You can't expect to tackle these issues by just tackling the symptoms rather than focusing on some of the issues that are really helping to trigger so many of those episodes, and obviously try to move people into that poor state of mental health. Into everyone has their good days and their bad days, but making sure that people have obviously got the support around them, that they know that they also have the skills to be able to handle some of those bad days, and then when the more acute instance do still happen, we obviously still need to make sure that we've got people and services around to help support there as well.
I think you're definitely right, but we've got to find our own medicine. So some people actually using the drugs are going to help some people, but other people it will be the talking therapies, and you kind of you don't need to negate one to do the other. You bring them both into play and find out what's working for the individual person.
Completely. I mean, when people are very unwell, you do need to treat the symptoms as well before you can
penicillin
actually help people get better. I mean, if people are in severe pain, you need to make sure they've got the painkillers as well as tackle the infection or the disease. And similarly, obviously, with mental health, there will be times so you just can't function without being able to have what might need medicine to actually tackle that immediate symptom. But I think the important point is that can't be the end point. And that has to be what you do so that you can then move on to all the other work that needs to be done.
Yeah, that's definitely
because I mean, within the Black Country, we've got bushy fields. Is there any plans with all these little fires happening now, and we're aware these fires are going to catch up with each other and it's going to explode? Are there plans to better bushy fields, maybe make it bigger? Because when what was the hospital we made in Birmingham, the NEC?
The Nightingale.
So I know the Pandemic was, we did what we thought, but the floor was laid, it was ripped up, and then everything was done, but nothing has been put in place. Because how many people are saying there aren't the beds? So what can we do to get more beds in there? And not only beds, more nurses, doctors, and treat our most vulnerable people better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, beds in acute institutions in the Black Country is important. We need to make sure that there is the capacity there. But I think also where we need to be looking at is making sure that all parts of the health service are properly equipped. They have the right skills, the right understanding, the right training to be looking at mental health in the same way as they obviously are with physical health. We need GPs to have the proper understanding so that this isn't left till people go to bushy fields. That and we obviously see as members of Parliament, get it at surgeries. Often people might be coming to me with a housing issue or a benefits issue, or employment issue, and actually, quite early on in the discussion, it becomes clear that there are broader issues than the immediate one they're presenting with. And it's the same with GPs. It's also the same, of course, in our schools and colleges and workplaces. We need people, particularly those trained professionals, to have the skills to be able to spot, okay, there's something else going on here. And this is how we can help, but also, of course, then being able to, what we call signposting, being able to tell people where else they can get the support that they need, where it's available.
That's right. I think we've had a couple of instances in the last few weeks, me and Kev, where we've, I won't go into details of personal people, but they've used A&E because they had a severe mental health crisis they've gone to A&E, they've been waiting around for hours.
72 hours, one of them.
Yeah, by the time they'd seen someone, they said basically, we can't do anything, go away, come back tomorrow. They went back the next day, and again they waited, and they went in, and by the time they saw a doctor at that point, he basically gave a leaflet and said, read this, it's got a few details on the bottom, and go home and search his website. And I think it's just about re-educating the doctors to actually, that's probably not the right way of dealing with that situation. You know, we can all go on the website and search these already. And he kind of felt like when he come out, it was already predetermined what that doctor was going to do, because he walked out with the leaflet and basically give him, you know, and it was on the advice of Bushy Fields for him to go to A&E. So maybe there's a mix-up in communication from there to there, and a better understanding with mental health with other doctors that needs to be brought through. And this is not a dig at, you know, this is Russell's. This is not a dig at Russell's Hall at all. It just, but if we don't speak about these things, they won't get corrected.
Yeah, and as you say, Lee, it's about making sure that there is the right place for these people to begin support. And until 2 or 3 years ago, actually, a large number of people who were having severe mental health episodes, many of them were being taken to police cells as being a safe place under legislation. Obviously, the laws changed now, so strong presumption that really you need a medical setting, not a criminal justice setting to be helping those people. It's still making sure that there is the place, and that when you get there, not only is the space, but there are people there who obviously know what you're going through, what support you need, and how then obviously to be able to put it in place.
I'll put it in, sorry Kev, I'll put it on my youngest daughter is severely disabled, and she has a really rare condition, so I don't expect to walk into an A&E setting and expect them to know about that condition, because it's really quite a rare condition, and doctors cannot know everything medically in the world. You know, it just wouldn't be possible. So you kind of you understand, but I think with the mental health, it's got to start shifting now to actually every doctor, nurse that's in there has some kind of mental health training background. So when they're recognising these things, they can pinpoint them into a direction of someone who's a specialist within there.
Completely. And I mean, this is something I've spoken about in Parliament, that it is now part of the core medical training. If you're training to be a doctor, there is now an increasing amount of mental health content to that. But of course, it's making sure that continuing professional development, that people who may have been GPs for 20, 30 years, they may know almost everything there is to know about a lot of the physical ailments that people typically go to their GPs with. It's making sure that they're still getting the training. They recognise both the importance of early mental health support, but also how it can then obviously be provided, because you know, we can't have it just being pot luck as to whether if you've got a relatively young, relatively newly qualified GP, then you probably get someone who's been trained in this. If you've got someone who's been a GP for 30 years, maybe a fantastic GP in every other regard, we can't have them not being able to provide the same kind of service.
But it shows in my own experience, when I hit rock bottom and went to the doctors, straight away, he recognised that he wasn't experienced enough, so he put me in touch with a mental health nurse.
You were lucky though, weren't you? Because how many other people haven't been lucky? Yeah,
well, that's right, Kev, that's right. But that's the ongoing training, isn't it? That's where they've got to make sure that everyone is up to that point. And there's nothing to be ashamed of that he didn't have the knowledge to help me. But he did have the foresight to go, well, you know, I'm not qualified in this, but this person is, so I'm going to move you in that direction.
Because even like someone nailed it on the other day, when you phone up your GP, what you're about, I'm depressed, I'm anxiety, the GP will phone you back. They should then go, well, why are you waiting? Here's a crisis number in case it gets severe, or here's a Samaritans, just in case you need to talk. You know, and having those gateways, because sometimes I'm suicidal, can you wait for a week on Monday? If you could buy that stage, it's taking me bottle to come and ask for help. And then when you're saying, I'll get around to it, that poor soul sees no other option to take his life.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't say if someone phoned up saying, I've got sharp pains across my chest and no feeling in one arm, can you call back next week?
Yeah.
And we need to obviously take mental health as seriously, and making sure that where there is clearly need for urgent care, that is provided on mental health. For mental health, in the same way as we rightly expect accident and emergency to be there if you've got a serious physical health.
And our police have got to stop. I'm not brushing all the police, from my very good friends at police, so I'm not saying anything. But we can't treat poorly people as criminals. And I think the roughhouse thing of someone's having an episode, he is not being a criminal. He or she aren't well. And that we need more better, like in the boxing world, we have to be safeguarded. We all need to do a physical first aid. If my nose is up on me here, quite obviously got a broke nose. If my knuckles down here, we've got to go to our knee. But we need a grassroots sports, teachers. We need more mental health first aiders, because with mental health, you don't spot the broke nose. You could walk past 10 people and the last person go, come here, Mike. We need to get you some help. We need this on the ground. So if we could do our bit, as a first aider, if you get hit by a car, I haven't got to save your life. I've just got to keep you alive until the professional comes. And that's what we've got to do with mental first aid. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, I think West Midlands Police have, in some areas, done some really good work on this. I mean, I'm critical of police at times. My dad was West Midlands Police for nearly 30 years, but I think actually there's been some really good initiatives, particularly their mental health triaging, where they've sent out, obviously, the psychiatric nurses alongside the paramedics and alongside the police, where they're responding to someone where they think there is likely to be a serious mental health consideration. But of course, it's being able to recognise that early on, that's not, if the call goes out on a Friday night and it's disorder in the around the high street, they're not sending out a psychiatric team, because the assumption is someone's probably had a couple too many drinks. So it's making sure that, again, that the understanding, the training runs through the service, so that when people get there, they actually recognise the circumstances aren't necessarily what they imagined when they when they got the call through the switchboard, and that where that care and support is needed, that actually people are able to recognise that and to respond appropriately.
I mean, we've said, this is, once it's already broken, it's extremely difficult to fix it. So what we would like to do, and we were talking off camera earlier, if we can get this at primary school level, so why is Kevin aggressive? Why is Lee shy? And we can get to the bottom of the cause early and teach people how to switch that trigger off, or get the breathing exercises and use it as a form of not P, but you know what I'm trying to say, self-awareness, and have each other there to go, me and Lee are in the same class, Lee, I think we need to go and see Dr. You know what I mean? Teach each other more empathy and teach people the skills at early doors, so we have a better chance of bringing into adult world.
Yeah, and my wife's primary school teacher. It's her occupation, and so she's obviously come back and described a number of instances like that with the various children she's taught over the years. And it's not about making excuses for poor behaviour. It's about obviously understanding there are times when there are mental health considerations, and if all you're doing is sending someone out of a classroom, actually you're not resolving the issue. You just at best bottling it up. If not, just making it worse. I
think we've also got to recognise how far it's come on, especially since I was at school at primary school level. It's come on leaps and bounds since that point. I know my own son over the COVID period while he was off, he was having welfare checks with his teachers who were phoning up and make sure he was okay. And it wasn't about schoolwork; it was about whether he was okay. And also they did things, wellbeing Wednesday, where he got half of Wednesday where he didn't have any schoolwork and he could do what he liked. Things along that line that do help. And you've got to recognise that actually we are going in that right direction. I think me and Kev would like it to speed up because of the crisis. I think everyone would like that to go quicker, just because of the crisis that potentially we could be stopping in years to come.
I also think, at the moment, once again, I won't use his name because he's 17. I think I mentioned him earlier. Because he's 17, coming 18, he falls into that void. And unfortunately, his parents were telling me, it's not just one child or one person. It's these people who fall through the cracks, and that will always happen. But it's about making that number as small as we can.
Yeah, and this is a big issue, and it's not just around mental health, but mental health is a particular issue. I mean, the division between children's services and adult services, when everything was reorganised, 15 years or so ago, to try and bring all of the children's services together for under 18s, and then everything else was adult services over 18s. It solved some issues, linking in education and schools with social service and like. It has left this.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, it's this big step, but often, as you say, it becomes this gap where between mid-teens and really mid-20s, people aren't being catered for in the way they need. And I say you see it in mental health, see it in social services, see it with looked after children, see it with a lot of educational skills issues. Absolutely. That adult services, we've got some really dedicated and hardworking people in council and other institutions on this, but the needs of someone who's 19, 20, 21 is very different to what obviously takes up a lot of the time, and for that matter, the resources of that directorate, which tends to be people at a rather older age group. And so it's making sure that transition is much smoother. I mean, I do quite a lot of work on autism and learning disabilities, and we see this particularly around autism, that people may be getting the support through their schools and possibly an FE college as they're coming through secondary school, maybe 16 to 19. But just at the point where they probably need the most support as they're moving into independent life and going into the workforce, actually, that's the point where the support is probably the patchiest.
But if we use mental health and autism, because that's a perfect balance, because as you know, with autism, there's a massive spectrum, isn't there? There's the thing, if you're lucky enough, someone has caught it and someone's gone, you're very, very low. And then there's and that's the same with mental health, isn't it? And I think sometimes if you're blessed, you have caught it at that. And some people I've met in their 50s and 60s, it was never picked up. And they've just been a bit different. Whereas other people, they can't live in a world, and it's so much more noticeable. And we've got to, once again, being bad to it, we've got to treat them the same. We've got to learn how to make it better. And, if you are looking up and you've had that great teacher, that great doctor who spotted it, but we've got to do more, haven't we? We've got to do more, and hopefully work with wonderful people like yourself who are going to try and make a difference, because this is going to be remembered. And we've either got to remember as we failed or we did our best not to fail. We've done our best. And hopefully with people like you on side, we are going to start making those differences.
It's massive challenge, I say, people of all ages. And you're absolutely right what you say about the similarities with conditions like autism in terms of, well, people call it spectrum. In some ways, even talking about a spectrum is a bit misleading. And the spectrum suggests that you go from, say, not very autistic to very autistic, whereas of course it's 3-4 dimensions of different features, different things. Some people will find some things easier, will be able to cope with some things better than others. And
same with mental health.
With mental health, you don't just go from, okay, one person's got a little bit of mental illness and this person's got lots of mental illness. There are so many different things that are in there.
And they're ever changing for each person.
Completely.
If there's one pill, we'd have fixed it. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, as we were saying, we've got to be, because I say, it's up to us now, and it is going to be difficult, but everything that's worth doing is difficult. If it was easy, there wouldn't be a problem. If it was easy, we'd all be world champions. We've got to fight the fight now, so our children have got a better world. And it's
up to all of us, Kev, isn't it? That's not no single person.
Once again, not red, not blue, not green. We've got to do this together.
Yeah.
And obviously being able to talk about it is is half the battle, and often one of the most difficult bits of the battle. In that, I mean, for a lot of us, actually, even when we know people very close to us are struggling, actually being able to have that conversation, I mean, it can feel a bit awkward. And we obviously see now all these awareness campaigns about asking how people are. I mean, that's not always as easy to take that first step. It can make such a massive difference.
I've said it on here before, Mike. I've been to the doctors. I speak to God knows how many people on a podcast, but I still find it difficult talking to my wife about it, which is absolutely crazy, really, when you think about it. How many people we are actually reaching and when I talk about my mental health. And we often say it doesn't actually matter who you're talking to about it. You can talk to anyone about it, whether it be Samaritans, your best friend, it doesn't really matter, as long as you are talking to people and letting go of that baggage that you're carrying.
But it shows intimacy. What's the two biggest killers for us blokes? Suicide and prostate cancer. But to get them both checked takes extreme intimacy. What we both know, we get prostate, but to allow someone to see it as our most vulnerable is the same about me opening up, saying, I'm struggling here. It shows so much intimacy, but sooner we can get it checked, more chance we've got of surviving it. But it takes that intimacy, it takes that trust, and more so, it takes courage to go and have that test. And then what it also takes is courage to get your chemo or courage to get your help for mental health. It's not weakness, it's courage, guys.
And it's not just about surviving, is it? It's about living happier.
Happier.
Yeah. No one really wants to survive life. You want to thrive and you want to be happy through it. Yeah. So it's about that as well.
But Mike, I'm gonna have to go because I've got a special needs school coming down, and it's been from the bottom of my heart. Thank you ever so much for coming on, speaking as honestly as you can.
No, thank you so much for making the time to meet with me and talk about it, say the work you're doing. And obviously it was fantastic to see some of the work you're doing within the club, and obviously more broadly also on mental health sport, recognised with the Hometown Heroes.
Thank you very much.
Award. I mean, I chair the cross-party group in Parliament that's leading on the Commonwealth Games, and I'm talking to the Commonwealth Games organisers. I know, how impressed they were with the quality of the people who were nominated, and particularly obviously the people like yourselves, the winners, and the work that's being done in the communities and making a massive difference and really just changing people's lives.
Well, thank you. And what we always do, and just because you're an MP, you're not going to get out of this, we always like to get our guests to say a quote or a saying that's helped them get through their life. And you're doing what every other guest is doing, going, you could have warned me, but I don't.
Yeah.
MP or anyone, I do this to everyone, no bias.
Nothing like being put on the spot.
I do it to everyone, so.
I mean, I wish I'd had the foresight to have actually given this.
I don't do it to anyone. Everyone's had this. Just anything, a simple key, that's helped you, or something. If you had to tell your young self or anyone something.
There's a poem by an American poet, and I did actually quote it in, Parliament a month or two back. And I'm very much paraphrasing here, and I've never been one who can remember poetry. But the long and the short of it was, it's about looking about the impossible and the thing that couldn't be done. It took off his coat, got right to it, and found the thing they told him couldn't be done. He'd only gone and done it. And I think, there's always people telling you, and I don't think this is just a politics thing. I think that, this is daily life. You see it in schools about what you can't get through, where the limits are. And I think that's talking to people in the community. I think that's one of the big pressures on people's mental health. Obviously, on both sides, is things that either people should be doing or things that people feel they just can't possibly get through, and actually having that the confidence, the drive, but also knowing that, yeah, you're not going to do it first time, that you're not going to win every fight unless you're something quite remarkable.
Yeah.
But actually, just having that purpose that we were talking about earlier, to be able to go out, working out what it is that that you want to be achieving in your own life, what you can be doing with other people, and actually, as I say, take off your coat and get to it. And the thing that people might have told you couldn't be done, sooner or later you'll do it.
Well, thank you once again. So, guys, until we see each other next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.
Listen.